Good evening and welcome to What's New. Tonight we have a room full again. So we have Travis and Sandy and Kathy and Matt and Joe. So whoever wants to go first can go first and just talk about what you came for. So, and if
Okay. All right. General consensus, I get to go first. So,
Okay,
all
ladies
right. Well, I am Sandy, and this is Kathy, and we are here because we want to talk about the Linden House. So the Linden House is in downtown St. Genevieve. It's a historic home. It's right across from the Bolduc House. So it's at 116 South Main. And we would like to invite people to come to the Linden House and play. So what we do is we have a Pay What You Wish Friday and Saturday that we're open to the public. We call it Hands-On History at the Linden House, and you can come and play. We ask people to make donations, and we do lots and lots of different things there on Fridays and Saturdays that people can come and enjoy. So I'm going to just go over a few of them if that's
sure,
okay.
that's great.
All right. Okay. So Kathy, on the inside, what do we have?
Well, we have a French colonial schoolroom
Okay.
where we do lessons on French colonial history.
So we have this old schoolroom, and when you come in, you can have a lesson. And right now, the lesson that we're teaching is French etiquette. And so I brought this nice little teacup, and we do set up a tea room. We teach a class on etiquette, and this year we're doing it with a chocolate twist. All right? The French really love chocolate. All right, and we can give you the history behind it, and we can tie it in with Colonial St. Genevieve very nicely, and then we let people sample this real American Heritage chocolate. This you can only get at Sassafras Creek, so I'll plug them a little bit, but they're very generous to give us some that people can taste. So we teach a history lesson on the history of hot chocolate in the French.
There's an etiquette picture.
Thank you. So we sit everyone down, and they get to serve real hot chocolate and cookies and proper manners and etiquette, and they get to speak French, and we do this on Fridays and Saturdays. So you can just walk in and say you want to participate in this class, and we do charge $3 for the class, but the house itself, they can come in for free. And so people really enjoy it. How many have we done? We've only been open for April. How many have we done so far?
We have done close to 180.
Okay.
180.
About 180 people we've done this class with since we opened. And so we just encourage you to come. And again, I'm going to put this back up for a second. We're open Friday and Saturday, April through October. And we have a Facebook page, and you can get on the Facebook page and see our hours. All right. So other things we do on the inside are we play. So you can see the kids, they come in, sometimes they'll put costumes on, and we have these two rooms we call the trading post, and they can go and they can grind corn, or they can grind herbs, they can make sachets and take them home. Everything we do is from the French colonial time period, and so we really try to engage the kids and adults and teach them history by letting them do activities. These are some cute little girls. So you can see they're sitting down in our trading post, and they're just playing. They just have so much fun. And the neat thing is, too, when you come in the Linden House, especially for the locals, is when you come in, I would say 80% of the things in the Linden House have been donated by local families and local people. And so we have a lot of very interesting things that the children can touch and play. So here, you might know these kids.
I recognize them.
So here they're weighing an old scale and trying to figure out who's got the most corn or apples, and they get to weigh it. And again, the whole trading post, they can pretend like they shop, they get baskets, and they get shopping lists, and they can go and touch everything and fill up their baskets. And so the kids have a really good time. And even the little toddlers, look at there, sitting down, playing checkers at the table. So the whole inside is open. So we do the etiquette class, the school room, the trading post, the hallway has costumes in it. We use every bit of the house. And then we use the outside. and the outside we have a lot of fun with. So I brought our favorite activity that we do at the Linden House, and you're shaking your head. Have you done this before? All right, good. So we teach tomahawk throwing, and this is from the 1700 time period. It was a very, very important skill that everybody had to learn. And Kathy is our expert tomahawk thrower, and I always embarrass her, but we had a tomahawk throwing contest last year in November for the Pecan Palooza. Well, it was 2 years ago, and Kathy entered and won it hands down. She got 10 out of 10. So throws. So she's very good at tomahawk throwing. So last year I didn't let her enter, just saying. So if you guys want to enter this year, you don't have to compete against Kathy. So you can see, here's Kathy. She's so good, she's got one in each hand.
And you hit bullseye with both of them.
I can, yes.
She can. We created a new tomahawk stand for her. It's got 5 targets, and her goal is, when we created this, it's like, okay, Kathy, you have to hit 1 in each target. You get 5 throws, 1 in each, and she can do it. And so she's very qualified to teach, and so we encourage you to come down to the Linden House and let Kathy teach you tomahawk.
And you use that real metal one.
We use real tomahawks. We have smaller ones for the kids. You do have to be 8 years old to throw a tomahawk, and she's very safe.
And
with
we
the
do
kids.
recommend closed-toed shoes.
Now, if you have little kids that are under 8 years old, we have a toy tomahawk stand, but it really does stick, so they have a lot of fun.
Oh.
So even the toddlers can throw tomahawks. But 8 years old and up, you can throw the real deal and learn how to throw tomahawks. So there's Kathy again, throwing, getting ready to throw. And so look at this gentleman. He was so excited. He stuck it right in the middle. So
sure did.
all ages. Here's a teenage boy throwing tomahawks. And so this is by far our most favorite activity at the Linden House, next to the tea party. Everybody loves the tea party. They love tomahawk throwing. So that's what we do.
And then not only do we have tomahawk throwing, we also have some living history outside on Saturdays.
So we were talking before we came on about Justine, right, and Ronnie, and how they dress up in costume and they teach, and so we have, sometimes Justine and Ronnie are on, they'll visit us from time to time, but we have people that come from the French militia and different people, and they come in costume and they teach a lot of the different skills.
Oh, how
So
neat.
that's there on Saturdays. So when you come on Saturdays, you'll usually find somebody in costume. This is one of our, she's demonstrating shooting there. So sometimes they'll have the flintlock guns, and so we just do anything that's related to the 1700 time period. So again, on Saturdays, you might find people in costume. So,
Okay. Then we have other activities that are outside as well. One of the favorites is washing laundry.
I bet. I heard that was a big
yeah, so I
thing
brought
down
a,
at Pioneer Days.
I brought a washboard. Who would have thought? You know, so this has become one of our most favorite activities. This was actually the idea of my daughter. We were setting up the Linden House years ago, and she said to me, I just used to love to wash clothes out in the yard. And so we thought, well, hey, that works. So we got washboards, and the kids have to go and actually haul the water over, and then they get to wash the clothes. They hang them out to dry. And these little kids, some of them will literally spend hours out there just washing
Playing
the
in the
clothes,
water,
playing in
yeah.
the water, washing the clothes, and they just absolutely love it.
A lot of the parents don't understand, though, why they can't get their children to do the laundry at home. And I say, you just got to set it up like this.
Let them do one piece at a time.
And then Grace's, it's a game, colonial game.
Grace's is a colonial game. It's played with basically an embroidery hoop, a couple embroidery hoops and sticks. And this is from the 1700s, and you just throw them, and there's quite an art to throwing them and catching them. And we've gotten pretty good at it. But the kids really enjoy it, and again, it's so fun to see these kids outside enjoying life with a embroidery hoop and sticks instead of on their cell phones. So they really have a good time. This is a cornucopia basket that we've been donated. We had donated about 4 of them, so we created like a lacrosse game with them. And so the kids go out and they throw fruit with it and have a lot of fun. So they'll just play and play.
Then we have Old Betsy, the milk cow.
You can milk a cow. Kids love to do that. It actually milks. We have chickens and eggs that they can pretend like they get. What else do
We
we have?
have wood knife throwing.
So knife throwing, we have targets. You can't see the targets very well, but they are stuffed animals that have blindfolds on because we don't want them to see the knife coming. And we have their hands tied behind their back, and the kids get to throw knives at them, and they have a good time.
Or they can shoot bows and arrows.
Or they can shoot bows and arrows at the animals. So again, the kids have a lot of fun, and so do the adults.
And this is something we just added this year for the backyard, new activity, duck races.
How does that work, Kathy?
Well, there's a tub of water and there's hand pumps and PVC racetrack, and they pump the water and the ducks go on the racetrack. And you see who
Oh my gosh.
gets back in the tub first.
Right,
So the pipes are cut in half where it makes a,
right. So those are just
that's a cute idea.
yeah, the children love it. These are just a few of the things. There's lots more activities at the Linden House. We just recently built a flatboat for the kids to play on. It's not open yet, should be open in the next week. But the boxwood trees, if anybody's ever been to the Linden House, we have the big, huge 200-year-old boxwoods, and the children love to play underneath the boxwoods as well. So we have a lot of different activities. So you can come. A lot of time when people come, they'll spend 2 to 4 hours and play, but you can come by for 30 minutes. And if you just want to see the Linden House, which is a beautiful historic home, we
It
give
is.
tours of the Linden House as well. And again, on Fridays and Saturdays, we just invite you to come, and then we have a donation box, and so you can make a donation. Obviously, the Linden House, we're all non-for-profit, supported by the Center for French Colonial America, and all non-for-profit. They just really have a heart for education, and they want to just keep this history alive for the next generation. So
Right.
we're very, very happy to have it. So
And so on Fridays, we're open to the public from 1 to 7, and then Saturdays, we're open from 11 to 4 to the public. So we just invite you to come out and play at the Linden.
play at the Linden. All right. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do field trips. But Fridays and Saturdays, we're open to the public. So that is the Linden House.
That is great.
So with that, the Linden House also, and I'm going to plug this festival, the Linden House likes to participate in all the local festivals, and so the Honey Festival is coming up, and it's on Saturday, June 24th. And so one way that we like to participate with this is, I think we do throw tomahawks at bees. No, at hive
Hive
beetles.
beetles.
At the hive beetles.
Oh, good.
Because they're
So-
nasty little critters.
Yes, yes. So we throw the tomahawks at the hive beetles, and then we'll hide bee-related things around the site that they can find, and we give little bee pendants away. And so we really like to support the Honey Festival and Amanda and the job that she does with it. And so this year and last year, we also invited a guest onto our front porch to do a book signing. And so, would you like to introduce Travis then?
There's Travis.
All right.
And here's his books. So he's going to talk about those.
Yes, ma'am. All right, well, thank you so much, Iris, for letting us
You
be
are
on
welcome.
What's New in St.
We
Genevieve.
always like it. Yeah.
Well, it's a privilege to be here. I'm glad to be a liked guest right now. But yes, and talking about the Honey Festival, yes, we had a wonderful time being a part of that last year. My kids and I all showed up with our Friend Sylvia t-shirts, and we sold lots of books and met a lot of people and just had a great time. And plugging Amanda and her honey store up there again, they actually carry our books there as well. So be sure to check out that. And they have awesome honey from
They
all over the
do.
place.
And the ice cream is delicious.
Yes, it is.
Oh my
It
gosh,
is.
that's the best ice cream around.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, just to introduce myself, my name is Travis Lee Pusey, and I'm from here in St. Genevieve. I'm the son of Vic and Sandy Pusey. This is my mom, who works at the
I
Linden
know
House, and we just
you.
happen to be here at the same time. So that's a blessing.
We actually didn't know we were gonna be here
I
at the
didn't
same
know
time,
until,
so.
yeah, so
Surprise, surprise.
praise God that worked out. So yes, I've grown up in St. Genevieve, went to St. Genevieve High School a long time ago. So it's a blessing to get to share about our book here in our home community. And so so a little bit about myself. I live here in St. Gen with my beautiful wife Allegra, and we have 6 children. And a lot of people in the community might know me more as a musician and a minister. I have a band called the Travis Lee Band, and we tour and we travel across the country. We've recorded 5 albums in Nashville, and have just been very blessed to get to do that. And so my wife and our 6 kids, we travel in our band bus across the country for just about half of the year each year,
how
just
neat.
sharing our faith and sharing our music at concerts and outreaches all over the country. So that's our lifestyle. And I'm excited to introduce everybody here to a project that I never thought I would do, and that is becoming a children's book author. I've actually written 2 full-length children's books now. They're a series of children's stories about a handsome honeybee that falls in love with a beautiful pale-faced spider, and they have all these epic adventures together. On the back of the book, we find that they have Sylvia's family. That's the little girl spider's dada spider or mama spider, and and Sylvia has 2 cheeky little brothers named Sam and Sylvester who always get into trouble. And so together they just have a wild time and just have this hopes of just crazy things that they get into all the time. And so I'm going to talk about those. As you can see here, I have 2 books, and I'll put them here on the little stand. But I have 2 books, and the first one is the original, The Adventures of Fred and Sylvia, which has 15 different stories in it, and that's where Fred the honeybee meets Sylvia Spider. And again, there's a honeybee involved, so we fit in perfectly at the Honey Festival.
You do.
And then the second story is Journey to Africa, and that's when Fred and Sylvia actually get married, and they go to Africa and become missionaries, and it's really a crazy time. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to pivot to kind of what inspired me to write these books and this story. And as I said earlier, I have kind of an unusual lifestyle. I have 6 kids, and we travel across the country doing our ministry very often. And it's really an amazing story how we got started doing that. But how that ties into this children's book is one day we were in Colorado touring and doing ministry at a lot of different outreach events around Denver and different things like that. And we had a day or 2 off, and we went to eastern Colorado to visit some friends, and they lived in the farmland. And we happened to get there just a day or 2 after all the crops were sprayed with the fertilizer. So it didn't smell very good. But it also drew in just a massive plague amount of flies. And there was these big, huge flies everywhere. Well, my little girl, who was just a toddler at the time, is petrified, horrified, terrified of bugs. And so we couldn't hardly even send her outside because she was so afraid of the bugs. Well, after we were getting ready to leave, I put her into our vehicle, and I buckled her in her car seat, and I ran back in to get another kid, and I left the car door open. And in that couple of minutes, about 30 of these big fat flies came into the vehicle, and they were landing on my daughter. And I was so glad we were out in the country because she had such a hysterical panic attack, you would have thought we were hurting her. And so she just freaked out until we rescued her. And so anyway, after that episode, I kind of had this moment as a dad thinking, you know what, I need to be doing better. I can't let my little girl grow up just being terrified of small things. And I live here in Missouri, and we live in the woods in a log cabin, and bugs are kind of inescapable. And so I thought, what can I do to teach my kids not to be afraid of little things? And so I prayed about it, and I had the idea to teach them through stories. And so every night when they would go to bed, I would tell them a little story about a family of spiders that lived in our walls. And it was a story about bugs that were just as afraid of people as my little girl was afraid of them. So she was afraid of bugs. I told her a story about bugs that were afraid of people. And I started telling this, and I used it kind of to teach them values and teach them about their faith. But my kids just loved it. They absolutely adored these stories, and they wanted to hear more. And so for a couple of years, I would tell them a different story every night. And eventually they pressured me to go ahead and write the books. And so that's what kind of started it all. And this is really the fact that my kids loved it so much, and so many kids are loving it, is why I want to encourage your listening audience here to go to www.fredandsylvia.com and get your copy of The Adventures of Fred and Sylvia, because our response has just been amazing. We get these out there as we travel across the country, and kids all over are really loving it. For example, just yesterday, I got a message from a mother in Massachusetts who sent me a picture of their kid, a little boy named Roger, cutest kid ever. And he's just holding this book up here and just grinning as big as he can. His mom proceeded to tell me how much he just loved and adored that book, and that he was so excited to get the second one in the mail. I have another family here in St. John that tells me that this book is the only book that their parents and grandparents will let them read to her. They love it. Just about 2 weeks ago, I had somebody message me and tell me their kids loved the book so much that they got some new pets, and they named all their pets after the characters in The Adventures of Fred and Sylvia. So I'm very honored that kids are liking it, and I do hope that people will get lots of copies. And I asked my kids, why do you think kids are liking this so much? And according to my kids, it's because the stories are epic. That's their word. My son likes it. These are epic stories. But they are. I mean, you have a little spider and a bee, and they have these encounters with, in one story, they run into a bear that's trying to steal honey out of Fred's beehive. And Sylvia Spider puts her life on the line to rescue the beehive from this bear. You have one story where the two cheeky little brother spiders, they actually almost get swallowed by a hippopotamus. I mean, just outrageous stuff, but the kids love it. But the reason I want to encourage parents to get this book, and why I love it so much, is that this book really is a book that has meaning. It's not just chicka chicka boom boom, will there be enough room, kind of fun little stories. But it's something that's written in order to disciple our kids, to teach them values, to teach them what walking our faith out really looks like practically. And, in this culture we live in, praise the Lord for TV. We're on TV right now. But there's so much on TV, so much on the tablets, on the cell phones, comic books, video games, things that compete for our children's attention. And I think as parents, we just need to be very intentional. And that's why I wrote this book, was to give parents, grandparents, people that love their kids a tool to help pour good things into their kids. And so that's really what The Adventures of Fred and Sylvia are all about. And the only other thing I really want to mention, because this really makes this book incredibly unique, is that if you look at all these incredible pictures and stuff in here, these were actually all illustrated by my son. And he was 10 years old, and that was our agreement. I'm like, I will write these stories if you illustrate it. And so he tried every day. That was his homeschool project, but he drew about 55 pictures, full color pictures, for each of the books. And it's just amazing. He did an incredible job. But what I love about that, what makes that unique, is that you really get the child's perspective on these stories by seeing it the way that they saw it. And again, for me, these are just a utensil, a tool for sharing our faith with our kids, and pouring the values and things that we ought to be poured into them. Give you a couple examples from the stories. In the very first story, and I got to show you the picture of Fred the honeybee, because he's a really good-looking bee there, his handsome bee. But in the first story, with Fred meets Sylvia, Fred sees Sylvia, and it's love at first sight. And he just immediately wants to get to know her, and he messes up. He actually proposes the moment he meets her by accident. And so he realizes he's messed everything up. And so, being a bee, and who knows his creator, he cries out to God, and he seeks the Lord, and God gives him wisdom, and God blesses him. And then he starts a godly courtship with that little spider girl. So that's kind of how they go. Another example of just how faith ties into the book. I think in the third chapter of this book, there's a story called Sam and Sylvester and the Jello. And that's a story where the kid spiders learn basically a lesson of the consequences of disobedience. One night they crawl upstairs when they're not supposed to, and they go into the people's kitchen and they find a big container of Jell-O. Well, being little spiders, they don't know what it is, so they start jumping up and down on it, and they think it's a spider trampoline. And so they're bouncing up and down and have a bouncing contest. One of them gets stuck in the Jell-O, ends up ending up in the refrigerator, nearly freezes to death until Dada Spider comes to the rescue and saves him. But in it, there's you get that kind of consequences of sin, but you also get the grace and forgiveness that goes with it as well. And so, anyway, just want to kind of open it up for a moment. If anybody has any questions about the Adventures of Fred and Sylvia, or comments, we could do that, and then I'll just kind of surmise them one time and let everybody know where they can get their copy of the Adventures of Fred and Sylvia.
So anybody out there that wants to call in, the number's on the screen, and we love phone calls. So if any of you guys have questions, you can ask also.
Over at St. with your family, did y'all play
Yeah.
a concert at St. Joseph?
We very well could have.
Yeah, down in Zell, like a few months back.
Probably several years ago.
Okay, so several years. So you did something like so you did that.
Yeah.
All right, that's
I'm
cool.
sorry, I lose track of all
No,
the
you've been to a
places we
million
play.
places. That, y'all are 6 months out of the year.
Yeah, about that.
That's-
That's on average. Now, it changes for us a little bit. If we just had a baby that year, we usually stay home a little longer. If we
Sure.
haven't, we go out a little bit longer.
Totally understand.
So how many years have you been doing it now?
As far as the music in the
Yeah.
ministry?
And,
Oh,
and the
goodness
books, when
gracious.
did those start?
The
Yeah.
books and the traveling and.
All right, yeah, the books are pretty new. The music ministry, we've been doing that, oh goodness gracious, since 2009. In 2009, we just felt prompted by God, we needed to be aggressive with our faith, and so we quit our full-time jobs. And I had already recorded several Nashville albums at that point, so music was a good in the door for us sharing our faith. But we quit our full-time jobs. I used to be a school teacher, and we went out on the road and just started doing it, sharing our music and teaching God's word in a lot of different places. So we've been doing that constantly since 2009. The books are brand new. This book, I've written other books and a devotional book before, but as far as a children's book author, that's happened about a year ago that I've tried my hand at that. And I've been very excited because we have sold way more of these books than I ever thought we would, and God's just been using it in a real amazing way. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Oh,
Your
and
devotional book was excellent too, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
when is this? So you said that you're going to have it at the Honey Festival, but the signing, like what's the particular day and the hours and?
So Wednesday is the Honey Festival.
So the Honey Festival was June 26th.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look on the
But
flyer.
he will be on that Saturday, Travis will be on the front porch all day.
Oh, all day. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so probably like from 10 to 4, 11 to 4,
Yeah.
are hours that were open.
Yeah.
And so he'll be there and probably have some of his kids
Yeah.
with him, and they'll be doing book signing.
Yeah,
and-
please come. My son loves, he's an illustrator, he loves doing autographs, like, that's his thing, so. And it won't just be his name, he wants to write like his favorite scripture and a few
It's the
other
actual
things.
date on the
And
flyer.
get
Yeah.
the- and
And then
put
I
another
think he
little
has
picture on
t-shirts,
there,
too.
Probably, right? Add a
Sometimes,
picture.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's cute.
And so you have t-shirts too?
Yep, we will have t-shirts, we'll have free stickers for any kids that want to come, just to promote the Adventures of Fred and Sylvia.
Okay, it's Saturday, June 24th,
Okay.
10 to 4.
So, yeah.
Yep, so Travis will be out there, and, if we can persuade him, we might even have him sit out there with a guitar occasionally, so.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
So.
Attract a lot of people with the music.
Yeah.
So just kind of wrap this up, and I'll turn it back over to you guys or whoever wants to share next. But again, this is the Adventures of Fred and Sylvia, Volume 1 and 2. And in Volume 1, Fred, the honeybee, meets Sylvia, and they have their godly courtship. And in Volume 2, they get married. They actually have 2 children, 2 little spider bees. And so that's a pretty crazy thing if you want to check it out, that they have very special gifts or powers, if you want to call them that, and they become missionaries to Africa. They survive a big hurricane, almost get eaten by a frog, and a lot of other stuff. So it's pretty, again, it'll change the way you look at bugs and spiders altogether if you read these. And then also we will have a 3rd book coming out in the fall, so stay tuned for that, and I think that'll be some of the best stories that we've shared so far, according to my kids.
So I was
anyway.
going to ask you, Travis,
Yes.
Volume 1, Volume 2, you're going to have Volume 3. How
Yes.
many volumes do you think the series is
The
going to
3rd
have?
one might be the end of it. There are more stories though, so we'll see. We'll just see how it goes. So, Not going to say the end of it. My kids always ask me, "Did you make these up?" I said, "I really think Data Spider whispered them in my ear." So that's however many he tells me. So. But anyway, so that's our stories. And to sum it up again, it's just a story that teaches values and faith, and I hope people check it out. You can get our books on our website, which is fredandsylvia.com. So www.fredandsylvia.com. You can also get them on our website, travisleeband.com, if you want to check out my band. But fredandsylvia.com. Also follow us on Facebook. If you check out Facebook and search for Fred and Sylvia Stories, you'll find our ever-growing Facebook page and get to follow the updates and different book signings and different kind of fun promotional things we do as well.
So do you have his book at the
At-
house also?
At the Linden House. Amanda carries his book at the Honey Store.
Honey Store, yeah.
At the Linden House, we don't sell anything.
Oh, you don't sell
We don't-
anything
we
there
don't have a
anymore?
gift shop. We don't
Okay, you
sell
don't,
anything.
okay.
So, which is nice because we work with a lot of the different local businesses and things, and I love to promote different businesses.
Right,
And help people, when they come to the Linden House, I try to get them to go visit the different merchants because
Right.
we don't sell anything, but they do.
yeah,
And we want people who come to St. Genevieve have a good experience. you
that's
know.
great, yeah.
So, anyway, so we all work together. Kathy and I, we do education. And we do
And we
hands-on
even tie in the downtown area with some of our
programs,
programs
yeah.
that
So,
we
yeah.
do. So like there's a scavenger hunt that we do, that people go and they have to go by all the different businesses and stuff, so.
And we did a honey program too, where they had to follow bee tracks all over St. Genevieve, and there was actually, we had one of our workers dressed up as a bee, and they were always going ahead of the kids, and the kids kept spotting this bee, and the bee eventually led them to Amanda's store, and where they got a nice education. So, like I said, we don't sell anything, but Amanda does sell Travis's books at her
Okay.
store. And,
So the bee was at the explanation of the honey last year, and the bee, what was that, when all the bees came to the one place?
I think that was at the Honey Festival.
Yeah, that was at the honey
yeah.
festival, it was across the street. But the bee was dressed up and was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people dressed up like bees last year at the Honey Festival. There was-
Mariachi people,
Yeah.
I feel like. There are mariachi bees.
Yeah, there was quite a few people who dressed up as bees. Yeah. So apparently it's becoming quite popular to dress, our workers, when I make them dress up as a bee, they're not all that happy about it.
No, we're not.
I'm not naming names. But yeah, there was quite a few bees at the Honey Festival. So again, plug this Honey Festival, and come and meet Travis.
And some really awesome kids.
Some
that'll be with
really,
me.
I think they're really awesome kids too. So, but they're my grandchildren, so.
All kids are awesome.
They are,
They are.
so.
And also on the 10th, I think it's the 10th of June, the Special Olympics, they've moved from the KC Hall now up to the park.
Oh, awesome.
So everybody needs to go up there also on the 10th.
Big
Chip,
banner.
I think is going to be on pretty soon to
Okay,
talk about
good.
it, yeah.
They hung the big banner out there for it at the
Pardon?
front edge. They hung the big banner at the front edge of town
Yes,
for it just
they-
today, I believe.
He
So
put that
that's
on
what-
Facebook today
Yeah.
that they hung it, yeah.
Oh.
So what kind of music do you play? All Christian music
It
or?
is all Christian music, so I do a lot of Christian rock music. I'm a loop station artist. I don't know if you know what that is. Well, I have a broken foot right now, but usually it's like a little recording studio. You operate with your feet. So I'll play guitar a little bit and I'll record it and play it back live, and I'll kind of beatbox sometimes. I'll make drum noises and record that, play it back, and
okay.
build it into kind of a big one-man band thing sometimes that builds stuff out. It's pretty fun. So I do that, do a lot of contemporary worship music as well. And everything's about Jesus. So.
Well, that's great, yep. Okay. So anybody got any questions for him, or want to move on to the next people?
I guess it sounds nice then, huh?
Okay,
All right.
you
Well,
can introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Matt Blumenfeld. I'm procurator of St. Joseph in Zell, and that's a a fancy canon law, Catholic Church law, a word for like representative, spokesperson kind of thing for a bunch of different people. So I'm not officially for like the parish itself, but for a lot of people who have got together and said, we want somebody to speak for us amidst some things that are going on. And Joe, you're doing the same kind of thing down the road.
We're doing the same thing. I'm the organizer for St. Lawrence and St. Agnes parishes. We're sister parishes, and I'm not serving as the procurator, but we have canon lawyers that are serving as procurator for the two parishes, and we have one in the United States and one in Rome that's going to serve as our advocate over there as well.
So what's going on, long and short, is I won't get into a terrible amount of detail because I think a lot of folks that I'd maybe be speaking to here with regard to, that are Catholic, with regard to a program that the diocese is doing called All Things New. And what it is essentially they're taking a whole lot of parishes, there's 188 in this archdiocese, and the idea is that they're going to group a bunch of them together, and that those groups will all have one pastor who's in charge. However many number of like priests are actually assigned to each pastorate, we still don't actually know. The final decisions come down on Sunday, May 28th, which corresponds with the feast of Pentecost, hence why they're calling this All Things New, Pentecost being when, you know, sort of the church of Christianity really like started after the ascension and the descent of the Holy Spirit. So they're tying these two things together. The issue that we have down here is that while we're getting along famously, the idea is that there's going to be a number of parishes around here in St. John and in Perry County that are going to be like put together under one pastor. And under the plan that they have right now, St. Lawrence, St. Agnes, and St. Joseph would all have one pastor. Right now, St. Joseph has one itself, and St. Agnes and St. Lawrence have shared one for, you know, a considerable period of time. And the archdiocese has said, well, we don't have enough priests that can be pastors, that can continue to do that. We can't devote that many resources to this. We're spreading everybody thin. They're reaching retirement age and that sort of thing. If folks that may be watching are part of Sacred Heart down in Ozora, they know that they've got, you know, a very big elderly pastor. If they're at Our Lady Help of Christians in Weingarten, you know that pastor is reached retirement age and so will be retiring. And this is something that is going to like happen over the next 10 to 15 years. And so the archdiocese is following what many other dioceses are doing around the country, and they're saying, we don't have enough priests, we have congregations that are sort of shrinking. What we really need to do is like consolidate all of this down. And in some cases, that may be warranted. You have situations in other dioceses where they've like, because of some of the scandals, they've gone bankrupt completely, and people aren't showing up to church anymore. Or there's been total depopulation. You're going to look at places like Erie. You'll look at some dioceses like Pittsburgh, or you'll look at dioceses such as those in New York, even Boston, although they kind of pushed back against some of this modeling, where the trends have been people have stopped coming to, like, not just coming to church as Catholics, they stopped going to church at all. They're very secularizing type areas. And St. Louis doesn't really have that kind of problem right now, thanks be to God. In fact, the St. Louis Archdiocese has one of the best priest-to-layman ratios in the entire country. The diocese itself, when communicating its plans, which they've been undertaking this project for like the last 18 to 24 months, right? It's been pretty much since Archbishop Rosansky came in 2020, right? So yeah, so basically since he's come in, he kind of said, well, I'm going to hit the ground running and we're going to reorganize things and shake things up. But even their own vicar of strategic planning has said, well, we don't have a priest shortage now, but we probably will have one at 10 to 15 years, you know, down the road. But what they're doing is they're making these huge wholesale changes that will result in a really different community experience for people here in St. Genevieve and Perry counties. And up in the cities, we'll probably see parishes close. And there's also still the threat of St. Lawrence, for instance, being officially merged together with St. Agnes, for instance, immediately, because they're quite small. I mean, you could talk a little bit if you want about that potential right now, even though St. Joseph is not quite facing that, but St. Lawrence might.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with, it's something really, for this diocese, it's something really new that we've not had a lot of experience with before. But yeah, the smaller parishes, it becomes very, very challenging, and a lot of people don't understand what all the ramifications are of the things that can happen. And so that's one of the things that we're doing respectfully within its canonical law rights that is outlined. And so as long as everyone is doing this respectfully and faithfully, then the parishioners of the parishes definitely have the right to appeal a decision or to voice their opinion should a decree come down that they don't agree with. The issues with that is that you only have a very limited time to do that. And so you only have 10 days. So that's why when, for St. Lawrence, potentially, it could happen to any of us. You have to prepare now, and that's what St. Joseph's is doing, that's what St. Lawrence and St. Agnes is doing, and that's what many of the parishes are doing throughout the Archdiocese right now, and we hope and pray that they are, so that at least they get their opportunity to be heard in a respectful way, following the proper procedures and guidelines, and having that happen. But for one of the key particular elements that can happen is the financial liability that goes along with this. So if a parish is suppressed, and in canonical terms, a suppression means it makes a parish extinct. Parishes have a juridic identity, a juridic person in canon law, and so they're identified as a person comprised of many people. And so when a suppression comes along, it makes them extinct. It basically removes the existence of the parish, and then they merge that parish to someone else. When that happens, if a parish is just suppressed, the Archdiocese is responsible for the liabilities of the financial aspect. But when they're merged to another parish, that parish becomes responsible for all of the liabilities. So that means the insurance bills, the utility bills, the upkeep of the buildings, the maintenance of the cemeteries, everything. And so that's one piece that a lot of people don't know about. They don't understand what the ramifications are of certain situations. So for our parishes that have been sister parishes for almost 6 decades, operating much like the pastorate model, 2-parish pastorate model that's being rolled out right now, we've been doing that, and with separate financial committees. And so it's been, each parish has their unique identity, and so the finances stay with them. But when the mergers happen, then that can have the damaging effect of the financial aspect, besides the harm that comes to the parishioners for losing their parish. Sometimes there's 3-4 generations of families that have gone through those doors. It's the baptisms, it's the funerals, it's the weddings, it's the loved ones that are in those cemeteries. And it's quite different for the rural parishes as compared to the urban and suburban. They typically don't have their own cemeteries. Almost every rural parish does. And so it's a completely different aspect down here, driving country roads to get from point A to point B. It's a lot different in the rural areas than it is in the urban and suburban areas. 5-6 miles doesn't seem like a lot sometimes if you're talking blocks in the city. But if you're talking about driving a windy country road
In the winter.
Yeah,
It's
you've
not
got the
well
weather
maintained.
conditions, and you've got, I even know one parishioner that went so far as to look at the environmental impact of parishioners driving the extra distance and the emissions, and they really went into.
Striking the deer and people
Yeah,
being hurt. Some
yeah.
people won't come back. I mean, there was already the issue with COVID happening and people not going and people not coming back. And that's one of the other things. Just by way of background, because I'm fairly new to the area myself. Although I'm married into essentially a family that has a lot of connections around here. If folks know Julie and Tom Stanley, those are my in-laws. My mother-in-law's a sex hour, so I have a very significant connection. Down a lot of folks. You're talking about people who are buried. I mean, there's a lot of folks that have married into that family that are like that. Down at St. Joseph, even though I'm a parishioner here across the way at St. Jen, me and my wife and our 6 kids, 2 of our kids go to St. Joseph, to the school, and we're quite fond, generally speaking, of small parishes. We came from a small parish in the heart of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where we lived for more than a decade before moving here last summer, and we were heavily involved there. And we're involved here at St. Jen and also at St. Joseph. We just find these communities to be extremely important and enriching to our lives and to the community at large. The thing is, though, is I think that a lot of folks that maybe who are parishioners here at St. Jen thinking, well, that's tough for the folks that may be facing this, but this is not like an issue for me. Well, something that Joe is pointing out is that St. Jen is going to be grouped together under this plan with Sacred Heart, with Our Lady Help of Christians, and already it has Saints Philip and James. And being grouped together means there may be enough priests to cover that, to say most of the mass schedule. Maybe, we don't know, but maybe that will happen. What we know for sure is that if they go forward with that, they've got one pastor now in charge of all 4. And also, at some point, they could all be merged together in one, identity in terms of, you may have masses at these places, but it may be all one, under canon law. Just think of it as sort of, it's church law. We say, juridic, have one juridic identity, but just think of it in civil law. If you took 2 corporations and you merged them into one, you only have one surviving entity at that point and one CEO. Well, that would be sort of a similar type situation. So now you've got one guy who's in charge of all of that, and one church, one community that's going to be in charge of all those buildings, of all those cemeteries, of the various different programs that maybe all of them had. And at some point, there's always the risk that those things, that's just too much for us. We're seeing offertory fall off. We're seeing people become disengaged because they're disillusioned about things being all merged together, so they stop coming. I mean, this was already the problem, allegedly, that we're having in terms of attendance, in terms of numbers of priests. Well, this plan, we think, will only kind of make that situation worse. So what we're doing, and what a lot of other parishes are doing, is one of the first steps is, we had a core team at St. Joseph get together, and they started getting these forms, which are called, procurator of mandates, and they just was have people sign and have other people witness saying, I want somebody to speak for me on this behalf. We here at St. Joseph have collected almost 190 of those, and by some comparison, there's only about 300 households. So we're now speaking for a majority of not just the people who actually come on Sundays, but just a majority of people who are registered with the parish are essentially saying, we do not want to do this. We have sent multiple letters to the Archbishop to that effect. In fact, we made copies of all of the mandates that we had up to a certain point, which was 170 something. We made copies of those and made copies of surveys. So the Archdiocese did some of these things called feedback sessions after they said what they were going to do, or here's our initial plan, and they went around. We have more people fill out our surveys from a core team of 6-8 people. More people filled out our surveys, and way more people signed our mandates and showed up. And there was some tough conditions out. Some of us outside because we're not allowed to be in the building. They're coming in at the Zell Fire Station. Thanks very much, folks, at the Zell Fire Station for allowing us to be out there. They're out there signing these things. My wife and Mickey Fleeg and a number of other volunteers going door to door, knocking on people's houses to have them, sign up these things. So we're now speaking at this point for a majority of folks. So we had copies of all of those, copies of those surveys, letter to the Archbishop, and I sent a big stack about this big in the mail just to make it clear, like, hey, listen, we don't like this. And then we came up with alternative plans, because while it's not true that we have a shortage of priests, it will eventually be true that we will have a shortage of men that are able to be pastors. That is, they've already completed their first couple of assignments as associates. You don't become a priest as a rookie priest and then immediately become a pastor somewhere. You have a first couple of assignments working with other priests, and you're the junior guy, and then after usually it's about 2 or 3 of them, of those assignments, you become a pastor. And then there's a lot of men that are reaching 70 years old or 75 or older, and that's it. They've had enough. They've reached retirement age. But many of those men also, if they're in good health, want to continue to be priests. This is what they signed up for their entire lives, right? Like, they said, now I'm going to, won't have a family. I'm going to give my entire life to the church. I'm going to give my entire life to God and to the people of God. And so if they're in good health, many of them want to just continue on as being priests. So we sent alternatives to the Archbishop just last week and said, okay, listen, we understand maybe there aren't enough pastors available, but what if we had layperson or our deacon be a parish life coordinator, and he would administer, he would take care of the business side of things, and then send us one of the older priests who still wants to minister to the people. Send us one of your younger priests who is not quite ready to be a pastor yet. He won't have to be. He can just take care of being the priest. He can say mass, hear confessions, baptism, preach, do, bless people's houses, come to folks that are dying, funerals and burials. He doesn't need to worry about the business side of things. We'll take care of the business side of things. This model does exist in the Archdiocese of St. Louis in a number of places, but further up in the metro area. And we thought, well, if this exists for other places, how come it can't work down here? We've decided that would be fine too. We'd like to have our own pastor, but if that can't be done, then how about a model that allows us to remain as we are as a community, and in fact requires more out of the people in terms of, you have to have a parish life coordinator, but we have people that are willing and able to do that. So we're saying, hey, if you need to say that you have to take away from the burden of priests because we don't have enough and some are getting too old, and the younger guys, some of these younger guys that we have coming through that are great, they're not quite ready yet, fine, then put it on us is what we're saying. But we don't want to be put in this pastorate situation, not because we don't love our friends up at St. Agnes, because trust me, we do. We've had meetings together in the hall. We brought everybody from Sacred Heart, from Philip and James, from St. Agnes, St. Lawrence, and am I missing one? Because we didn't have anybody from Our Lady Help of Christians, I think, unfortunately, that day. So, out of all the parishes in St. John County, I think there was only 2 that were not represented, which is Our Lady Help of Christians and then one down in Kaufman. But they're going to be in a different planning area anyway, so it's not really like...
They're going to Farmington.
They're going west,
Yeah.
to Farmington. And they already are being
Right.
under the care of Farmington as it is now. So, but basically everybody in St. John County, representatives from every parish got together. So it's not that we don't. We're just worried what that means, though, for the future, potential suppression entirely of the parish.
Yeah, there's something in canon law called extinctive union. And so that's another element that people just aren't aware of. And so what can happen is every parish can be suppressed in a pastorate. That means they suppress every one, they make every one extinct, and they reopen one and create one new parish from the other parishes. So it's slightly different than one parish surviving and parishes being merged to them. They do that, and when they do that, oftentimes they change the name.
Mm-hmm.
So for some folks, that may not be a big deal. For some folks,
For here.
the
It's a big
history
deal.
can be a major issue. And there's the other part which, you know, the Holy Father said you use gradualism. That's what the canon law preaches, that's what the church's teachings speak to. And so this isn't one of those situations where we have to be in a hasty situation and really go to the most extreme measures right off the bat. I think that's one of the most important elements, but with the onset of the extinctive union that can happen, then it's very easy to see how, for St. Genevieve, there could be potentially 3 satellite campuses and 1 primary campus, and that is all got to be taken care of from the newly created parish. And so there's factors that impact that. The Archdiocese has acknowledged, and Dr. Bob Onder is procurator at a higher level for many parishes across the Archdiocese, but I believe he's the one that said that the Archdiocese is saying that there's probably going to be around a 20 to 25% loss of the faithful. And so they're acknowledging right off the bat that they're saying 20 to 25% will walk away from the Catholic faith in that return.
Because of this.
Because of this.
Solely because of this.
And so you have that factor. Then you have the factor of, they say you're merged and you're going to this parish. And a lot of folks I've talked to say, no, we're not. It doesn't make sense for us to go here. If our parish is made extinct, we're going over here. And the fact is, their funds go with them. Other people will go to the new parish, but they're not going to give like they used to. And they're certainly not going to join the new parish. Other folks, they'll go, they'll give, and they might be indifferent to the situation. But when you add everything up, the negatives far outweigh the positives. And so it's a shock for people because it's hurtful when they lose their history and everything that goes along with that. But then you also have this other factor that plays a significant role.
So just to run down, you know, a few other things that we wanted to get in there. We want to make it clear to folks that the vast majority of parishes that will even be grouped together, they're not in bad financial condition. In fact, if you go through the workbooks that the Archdiocese has released, the vast majority of them are actually fine financially. In many other places where programs like this are being undertaken, that's not the case. You have congregations that almost don't exist anymore. You have churches that are in disrepair, and you have bad financial situations, whether it's bankruptcy as a result, sadly, from scandal, or just because of depopulation, you know, places are being abandoned. That's not happening here. There are a few that it would make sense when you stand back and look from, you know, a 30,000-foot perspective, and you say, okay, well, there's some parishes here that are very close to one another, and they were all built for European immigrant communities, because this was the Italian one, and this was the Irish one, and this was, you know, and that was in the, you know, the turn of the 20th century. And those communities have all assimilated, and folks have moved out to the suburbs decades ago, and so they've lost their identity there, and nobody really goes to them anymore. It's understandable. It's regrettable, but it's understandable because the people aren't there physically anymore. It's not that there's been a loss of faith or a loss of money, but literally there's nobody there anymore. They all moved somewhere else. Of course, that's not applicable here in the rural parishes, and not really even applicable in the suburbs. We're also very concerned that there wasn't a lot of evangelization done before this. The analysis that they did about what could happen in the next 10 to 15 years and how we're going to need to respond to that, and it's always prudent to do these analyses and think about what could happen, especially since it has been a long-term trend in terms of people secularizing, and that's been a trend across really every denomination of Christianity and every faith in the United States and in the entire Western world. We're hardly alone as Catholics in that regard. But you had hitting like these post-COVID lows masses resumed, within a few months here in the Archdiocese of St. Louis. But in many cases, you had big annual events that were a time when everybody got together that were canceled well into 2021, and even in some cases in early 2022. The Sunday obligation to go to church on Sundays wasn't brought back until July 1st, 2021. And most of this analysis is being based off of 2021 attendance, trends from 2011 to 2021. They acknowledge things falling off in 2020, and then they say, oh, here's the bounce back. Well, how can you really say that when it was perfectly fine, according to church law at the time, for you to not go to Mass until July 1st, 2021? And there's many more people that are marginally attached to the church that would have not gone for a considerable period of time, maybe up until Christmas of 2021, and then were they going to get back in that habit? Not on their own, certainly not. Where was the effort on the part of the Archdiocese telling pastors and telling us, the lay people, hey, if you've seen somebody that's not been to church in a long time, or you know somebody, get them to, let's have a program, let's get them to come back, let's do a post-coronavirus, get everybody back into the churches. But now, they're starting a program of evangelization. Well, it's nice to see. They had it at the DeBerg Center a couple months ago. I was there, here's how to talk about your faith with other people. Here's how to invite people to come back to Mass. That's really bad timing. I appreciate the program and everything like that, and the lady who is running it is wonderful and had a lot of really good ideas. And this is hardly her fault. But why in the world would you do, here we need to start a program of evangelization after you've announced that you want to consolidate, the governance of churches, and that you're probably going to close some and people don't know? I mean, it's a situation where people are already disheartened, discouraged, and in many cases angry. That's not a great base to build off of for evangelization. A great base would have been, hey, COVID stuff is over, and the bishop says you should come back to Mass, so come back to Mass. Let's get in here. I would say St. Joseph stands out, particularly in terms of one that ought not to be grouped together with others, because it has very high Mass attendance versus the number of registered households. You've had registered households declining because the population in that area is getting a little bit smaller. But people are still going to church. So you have 300 registered households, but you have, on average on the weekends, 225 plus people actually showing up in the pews. And you think, well, that's not super great because there's usually at least 2 people in a household. But actually that's a lot better than most parishes in the entire Archdiocese. Our PSR enrollment, which is our Christian Formation Sunday School, though it doesn't take place on Sunday, is near 100, and that's far too large to be combined together in a program with St. Agnes. The funerals, the baptisms outpace the funerals, even though you have an aging population there, which would indicate people are bringing their kids to get baptized into the faith. They're bringing them there for their first communion and for their confirmation. It's a small community, but it's very vibrant. If we want to deal with the vocations crisis that we're having, with people not becoming priests, young boys thinking about being priests, with girls thinking about being, religious sisters, we need to have more parishes like St. Joseph that are small, tight-knit communities that have a closeness with their pastor and a close with one another. That is how you really build, and you have people consider giving their lives, entirely to God. And we question, the wisdom of all things new in general, or at least of many aspects of it, because there are some places that it would probably make sense in the metropolitan St. Louis area to close, because they've done that on a gradual case-by-case basis before. So okay, we'll do a catch-up because we froze it in 2007, I think they stopped doing it entirely. So okay, we'll catch up and make up for that. But these wholesale changes, it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you pilot this pastorate model beyond a place like St. Agnes and St. Lawrence that have been doing it for 60 years, or St. Maurice and St. Joseph Apple Creek down in Perry County? This is very long-standing, so that doesn't really work. Why don't you put 2 together that haven't been doing this, and they've been struggling, So we'll do that as a pilot, and we'll see how it goes. We'll check for in a couple of years. If it's been helpful, then maybe we should roll it out to additional ones. But they didn't pilot it, they didn't test it. They're just like, well, this sounds like a decent idea because some consultants told us that it was, and we see other dioceses are doing this, so we'll do it. But those other dioceses aren't having great success with it. What they're hoping is that it will lead to a revival of people coming back, but that isn't happening anywhere this is being tried. It's been managed decline, and that they've been saying is we want this to be so it's all things new, and we're doing it at Pentecost. We want this to result in an explosion of people coming back to the faith down the line. But it's not ever worked out that way anywhere that this has been tried. Why not try other things then? Why is there hostility to importing priests from other parts of the country or other parts of the world? We have a couple of neighboring dioceses that actually have a surplus. Well, not neighboring, but they're not too far away. Omaha, Nebraska has more priests than they actually need, which is a wonderful problem to have. Why wouldn't you consider knocking on the door and saying, would you come, down a ways and have a couple of priests there? What about the former mission territories of Africa and Southeast Asia? We sent so many, men and women out there, women religious and priests and lay missionaries to Africa and Southeast Asia that resulted in tremendous dividends for the Catholic Church, where it's growing like gangbusters, and they have many, many priests there. And we've heard from the Vicar of Strategic Planning who has said it is a sign of an unhealthy diocese if you have to import priests. Well, saying that you need to close like half of your parishes over a 10-year period is a way bigger admission that you have an unhealthy diocese. How about restoring it to health by bringing more doctors in, by bringing more priests in? I came from a diocese in Richmond, Virginia, that did just that. My pastor at Holy Comforter in Charlottesville started the program there to import priests from his home country of Uganda. He has a long and very interesting story. The long and short of it was he was a diocesan priest in Uganda, and he was so overwhelmed by being a diocesan priest in a very growing area that he said, I want to quit all this and I want to become a monk. So he applied to become a monk, and he got back answers from Kenya and from the United States. And he said he chose the United States because that would get to him to become a monk the fastest possible. So he chose to come to the United States, having never really been here ever before, because that would be the quickest way that he could then just live with other priests in quiet contemplation. And when he arrived, within 2 years, he was sent all around the diocese, having to be the guy who would say Mass when anybody went on vacation. Then he got assigned to the boys' preparatory school and had to be the chaplain for them, which was even busier than the diocese that he was in Uganda. And then eventually he became our pastor. And in the meantime, he noticed that there was a shortage of priests, just like there are in a lot of places. And he said to the bishop one day, we have a lot of priests. I have cousins, many cousins who are becoming priests, and they don't really have, they're not going to be pastors, they're going to be associates because we have so many. Could we bring some over here? And the bishop thought that was a wonderful idea. And so now, if you look at the leadership of the Diocese of Richmond, half of the men, half of the priests who are deans, they break up a diocese into these administrative sections, 1 through 12. Half of the priests that are deans are from Africa. So half of them that are in major leadership positions are from Africa, because they're such wonderful men, and they inspire the people there. And it has been successful in that it tided them over in this period where they didn't have enough, but they had congregations that were starving for the sacraments, starving for the Word of God. And what has happened in the interim? There's been a surge of vocations within that diocese. Every time I go and take a look at the picture that says pray for our seminarians in Richmond, the picture gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I remember when I started living there, it was like this big. There was like 10 guys in it, and now there's like 30 that are studying to become priests. So why wouldn't you consider that? The final thing that I wanted to say anyway, and Joe, I'll let you take it away after that, is that no matter what happens, from our perspective here, and I speak on behalf of all those at St. Joseph that have assigned me to, and I'm very touched by them having me serve as their spokesperson. We're loyal sons and daughters of the church. we're not leaving, we're not going away, regardless of what happens. To whom else would we go, right? I mean, you have the words of spirit and life, was what Peter said to our Lord. But we have the responsibility, according to canon law, to protect our rights to the sacraments and continuity in our parish. So we would urge all those that would be affected, not just those who have gone to Mass at St. Joseph, but everyone who's Catholic in this entire archdiocese is going to be impacted this in some way or another. Write to the Archbishop. His final decision comes out in just a couple of weeks. Call the Archdiocese office. Let your voice be heard. And most importantly, pray to the Holy Spirit and get involved in your parish. And if you haven't been to Mass since Easter, since Christmas, since COVID, since the scandals all broke a couple decades ago, since you were a kid, we want you to come back. Your church needs you. You know, we have, if you'd be so kind, this is in black and white. I should have brought the color version. We're happy to have you come to a Mother's Day brunch that we're having this Sunday, right after the 10 a.m. Mass. It's free for everyone in the community. If you're an every Sunday Catholic, if you haven't been back to Mass in a while, or if you're not even Catholic, we'd love to have you at our brunch. We'd love to have your prayers, and we'd love to have, you know, your support for your local community. Joe, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Just a couple of things. First, I should say that we're still in the process of getting mandates for St. Lawrence and St. Agnes, and so I just wanted to pass along a couple of dates. May 16th is this coming Tuesday. We'll be at the Knights of Columbus Hall from 6 o'clock to 7:30. So if you're a St. Agnes or St. Lawrence parishioner, please come by, sign a mandate. We'll be there the following Tuesday, May 23rd.
In Bloomsdale, right?
In Bloomsdale, the Bloomsdale Knights of Columbus Hall will be there the 23rd as well, from 6 to 7:30. At the Queen of Hearts, we set up there, and it makes it kind of handy for people to come by. So we're going to do those next two signings. We have notary publics that'll be there to notarize the documents, and so those are a couple of important dates. But I think one of the things that kind of gets lost in the shuffle with things like this sometimes is those who are not Catholic. Our parishes stand in many communities. There's St. Vincent de Paul's. St. Agnes runs one of those out of the basement of the church. There's food pantries. There's lots of things that parishes do that non-Catholic and Catholic people come together to enjoy.
After the shooting matches next door at St. Joseph, a lot of people use the cafeteria down there. Folks can come out to the Cosmic Bingo that's happening in a couple weeks, and June 3rd. So yeah, there's centers of community. It's not just, hey, this is only about what's going on for Catholics. It's more.
It's a message that the Archdiocese has put forth, and I certainly want everybody to pray for the Archbishop, to pray for everyone connected with this. This isn't a we-they thing. This is folks making decisions, and we all live our faith. And so it's trying to make sure that the right decisions are being put forth. But there are some trends that have changed things a bit. And at the end of last year, there's a few disturbing things, but at the end of last year, the trend for Mass attendance rose 2.3%. It's on an uphill swing, and that may not sound like a big percentage, but it's significant. And there was 139 out of 178 parishes that showed an increase for Mass attendance. There were 41 that were the small and rural parishes that showed the most increase. It was coming from the smaller and the rural parishes. We even have folks in, we have a person in the seminary right now. We have a person in the diaconate. We have had a couple of nuns come out of our parish, and that's in more recent times. So a lot of the rural parishes contribute greatly to the vocations that we see. So they talk about evangelizing every square mile of the diocese. And I think that's hard for people to understand if you retract the parishes from those square miles. We don't have an answer as to how are we going to do that if we're not there for the people that have counted on us. And a lot of times, and it's not just down here, it's anywhere. If a parish is made extinct and they can't provide those services that they were to with outreach to the folks, if they have to drive an extra 5 miles, those extra few gallons of gas that they have to spend to get from the extra point, it may not seem like a lot, but to some of these folks, it's a lot. It adds up to a lot of
They
things.
can't get it then.
So, no, so, we just don't know, there's been no, discussion about how we're going to accomplish what we're going to need to accomplish. And the other side of this is the fact that the mission that's being put forth, All Things New, should be addressing ways to change the trends.
That's right.
So if we have confidence in the mission and the plan, then we should have confidence that we're going to be able to change the trends. And if we're doing that, then we ought not take a drastic measure as the first step. I know that the Archbishop has said that in the April-May edition of St. Louis Catholic Magazine, that the first step would be to close parishes. But it ought to be the last step. The most drastic step should be the last. So we're all working together. We're following the guidelines of canon law. And the hope is that when May 28th comes about, that there will not be a lot of decrees issued, that there will be time for gradualism and time to take pause and really look at these decisions that are being made, and then laity, religious alike, everybody working together, come up with the good plans moving forward and looking at how we can really make this work for everybody.
And just as the final thing I'll say is that, that's right. This is one of the things that I say in our Facebook group. I wanted to pitch real quick. If you wanted more information, you can go to Save St. Joseph, so save, S-T, Zell.org. On Facebook, you can search for Save St. Joseph Zell. We post in there updates about what we're doing with regard to All Things New. But something I wrote today just in there is that this is a beginning. What happens, the decisions that come down on May 28th, since I pray, but it seems likely will not result in a decree like merging St. Joseph with St. Agnes, but would put us in this pastorate model, but it runs the risk of 3-5 years down the line that happening. But you can't close the churches if they're full, folks. You can't close the churches if you're full, because you have to have just reasons. It's against church law to close them, especially if they're full. So if you don't give them a just reason, they're not going to close. So what that means is that we are making a concerted effort to use this as our building block for evangelization. These efforts to get these mandates signed, people were knocking on the doors. It wasn't just that. It was inviting people to come back to Mass prayer. Or do you need somebody to bring you a communion? Do you need a priest to come visit you? Do you want us to sit here and pray with you for a few minutes or something like that? Just inviting people back in. We've got the Mother's Day brunch coming up. We've got Cosmic Bingo that's going to be happening in June. We've also got a lot of things that are tied together specifically with the Catholic liturgical calendar events that will be happening. St. John's Eve, the feast of St. John the Baptist, happens in late June. And the day before that, historically, has been like a big party type day, actually. And we're going to have a bonfire and a bit of get-together, a sacred fire, actually, where the fire will be blessed. And if you have old sacramentals, old rosaries, or blessed items that are all tattered, and those palms from Palm Sunday that you can't throw away because they're blessed, you can bring them to the blessed fire and they can be burned and taken care of there. And then so there'll be time for singing, for prayer, and also for a lot of food. So that will be a good time, and you can expect more of these kinds of events where we hey, listen, if we could have National Donut Days and everybody gets to have a donut, you know, why can't we take some of these feasts that are beyond just like Christmas and Easter and stuff like that and have it be a big deal for our fellow Catholics and make parties out of it? So you can expect to see a lot more of those things happen at St. Joseph, and I've also been in touch with folks at St. Jen to sort of do the same. They have their own evangelization program. I've got good friends there. We'll try to tie together some things with liturgical events so that more and more people will really embrace their identity as Catholics, and it will become a really like a central aspect to their families, and that their lives will revolve much around the church because, you know, Travis, you were saying, the world out there has got a lot of stuff competing for your attention, for your children's attention, for your grandchildren's attention. So if you don't have your eyes fixed on the right thing, their eyes are going to go elsewhere. If you don't make the church attractive and mean something a lot to you, they're going to drift to these other things. So that's what we'll be doing for sure down there. And I know that you guys already did a lot during the Lenten season. You did a lot of fantastic stuff, extra masses, life in the spirit, and I'm sure that's continuing through the Easter season and beyond.
Oh, yeah, we'll do that. We have our summer bash every year in St. Lawrence for forever and a day. It seemed like they have the St. Lawrence picnic, and people would come from other states to come to that. COVID hit, and they had to not do that for a while, but they're planning to rejuvenate that. So there's a lot of big events like that, and they're like we were talking about, they're not just Catholic centric
Community
events.
institutions.
They're community institutions, and that's really what the parish is all about. I would just encourage folks, if you don't understand or you don't know about all of this that's going on, this is a great time to ask questions. You need to ask questions, be informed, so that way when whatever it is that comes down the road, you have a better understanding of things, and then you have a better path forward, and you're even able to help with contributing your knowledge and your information to going forward with these things. So I really encourage, no matter what parish folks go to, no matter where they're at, ask these questions, be involved, be informed, and really know what the potentials are for the paths forward.
I think the thing I really feel bad about is all the elderly that built these churches, and their families built the churches,
Yeah.
and they won't have transportation to the church unless somebody brings them, or they get a bus or something and go pick them up.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because, you know, Canon Law 835.1 it kind of describes what one of the highest priorities for an archbishop is. And it is ensuring access to the sacraments for all the faithful. So we know that driving a country road, there are folks that they're not going to get out of their comfort zone. They're not going to be comfortable doing it, and family wouldn't want them to drive unfamiliar roads or to travel those extra distances anyway. So it's not that they don't want to go to Mass, it's that they're not going to be able to do it. Because
Right.
not every one of them is going to be able to find somebody to take them. So it really does impact that access to the sacraments, and it's much different in rural situations than it is in urban situations.
Urban, you got public transport, you've got churches that are coming together that are literally on the same block. You know, okay, that might make some sense, right? Because not many people, they're not filling up these churches that are within a block away from one another, and it's not that big of a deal if you put them together. Okay, fine. Not the case here, you know, definitely not the case around here.
No,
And the thing is we don't know what's gonna happen, so, but the next way forward is that we can't say, oh, well, we didn't get the thing that we wanted the most, so I'm just gonna throw up my hands and be angry and whatnot about it. I mean, chances are, your parish, in terms of, you will still be able to have Mass, chances are, I can't guarantee that, but chances are, wherever you are, if you're watching this, that places that you have been to Mass before, you'll still be able to go, but it may not be as easy. So that's the point, is that if they do that, boy howdy, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that some of those folks get those rides.
Right.
You know, you need to then step up to the plate, folks, as much as you might be discouraged and angry and upset. Trust me, I'm somebody who loved to go to the old Latin Mass, have that still at my old parish. Am I upset at the Pope for what he did in terms of restricting a lot of that stuff and the things that he said about it? Yep, I am. Is he still the Pope? Yep. Do I still have to respect it? Yep. I don't have to be happy about it, but what am I going to do? Throw up my hands and say, well, geez, he's done something that I really don't like and I think is wrong, so I'm going to quit on the church. No, I can't do that. That's like quitting on my family. If my family does something that, I don't like, my father, I've been disrespect him or something like that. No, I'm going to move forward and I'm going to try to make the best out of it. And so if they close something or they limit the number of masses that are happening in your particular parish and somebody can't get to this other one, you need to help start a ministry where you're driving people to church. It is not an uncommon thing. That is a very normal thing to happen. So, you need to be knocking on those doors of folks if you think, oh, geez, there's somebody who is at St. Lawrence and there's a decree that come down. So we'll fight against it, but we don't know what will happen. Well, I need to figure out a way that I can make sure that person can still come to church and not just come to church because you have to go to church, but that's a lot of what these people's communities are. That's their community, especially when you reach a certain age. Your church community is your big community. So you need to make sure that these folks stay in touch with their communities and feel and really are part of them, because it's a real big reason a lot of them get up in the morning. You need to make sure that their lives are still staying enriched, that community. It's our jobs. This is the job of the lay people. It's not the jobs of the priests. It's not the job of the bishop. Our job is to go out and preach the gospel. They're the ones that have to give us the sacraments and everything like that. Our job is to go out there and preach the gospel. So for too long, we said, oh, no, it's the priest's job. They're supposed to be up there preaching. They're doing all that stuff. Our lives are the ones that witness to the gospel, and we're the ones that have to bring other people to the faith. It is not the responsibility of the priests, and it's certainly not the responsibility of priests and deacons to make sure that people show up. We've got to help get these people. So get involved. No matter what happens, get involved to help alleviate as much of the disruption as possible. And the more engaged you are, the more engaged other people are going to become. The more engaged other people become, the more you spread the gospel, the more people show up in the pews, and then the less likely it is at the end of closing the things. This is how the whole thing spreads. Go read the Acts of the Apostles and see what happens. This is a good time. We're about to come to Pentecost. Go read Acts of the Apostles and see what happens.
Okay, well, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. This is really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And we all need to pray for sure.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, let's tell Charlie goodbye and all the people out there. Bye, everyone.
Bye.